Welcome everybody back. So today we're gonna have one more review called the Song of Nunu. That's the franchise from the Riot games, especially from the League of Legends lore. So I had an imaginary friend growing up. You most definitely did too. It's okay to admit that you were once a young child with a wild imagination that manifested in the form of gigantic imaginary body who played games with you, comforted with you, cried and hugged when you were scared. Things were more innocent then. You don't have to worry about the scary things like annual checkups at the doctor, teeth cleaning, texts every April, and your phone dying because you forgot to plug it in last night. Imagine for a moment if your imaginary friend was real. Think about your imaginary fuzzy friend being a gigantic pal who was always by your side. You could play with them in the snow, build snow persons, have snowball fights, and go on adventures. How does that sound? That's, my dear reader, is the gist of Nunu and Willump's relationship in Song of Nunu, a League of Legends story. Oh, you can hug your imaginary friend. Give a hug to him. Song of Nunu puts the player in control of Nunu, an orphan no-tail child of the Freljord within the childhood flute. Along with him is a gigantic four-armed fluffy, unlightable yet goofy yeti pal named Willump. Their tale is of engagement, discovery, and legend as they make their way across the frozen wilds of the Freljord. If you are familiar with Nunu and Willump from the Riot Games League of Legends, you should expect to experience a great deal of childish wonder thanks to Nunu being no older than the 8 years of age. He's a wee toad that sees a world throughout the lands of endless adventure despite losing his entire family. For those familiar with the Riot's Forge previous games, you should expect to see World of Runeterra throughout the more narrative-forward lands that has breathed life into the Riot games. The gigantic cast of magical characters. Either way, Song of Nunu is the adventure throughout the emotions, leaning quite heavily into the childless and native that they are often lost among the players who transition it away from the simple games into the more mature titles. As I've aged, I've become less and less interested in watching films from Disney and Pixar, simply because of how I've connected with mature and emotional themes. On the gaming front, titles like God of War 2018 and Kentucky Road Zero have succeeded in forcing me to feel seemingly foreign feelings of trauma, intrigue, and the loss of innocence via the tales of varying specificity and wagonese. Some emotions were pulled from me from explicit cutscenes of the loss of major character, whereas the emotions emerged long after I finished the title, and I threw it back to what I played. As such, I've sung titles that made me feel something genuine, even that feeling is something that made me feel less happy. Song of Nunu has made me feel things I've forgotten about. I sit before you, a 30-plus-year-old player, one without children, sans those of my extended family members. I've been far removed from the feelings of wonder, need, and simplicity of expressed from those who are coming of age, making their way throughout the world. Put simply, I've never forgotten what it's to be child. Playing this game reminded me of the silence and ridiculousness of the child logic that take to Nunu's story, and his journey begins with the friends Willump. It's also reminded me of how fun life was when I was but a wee too. Sans gigantic fluffy and the snowball flights. I grew up in Los Angeles, so for lacking experience by a frozen sky anyway. Well, let me be clear, I'm not attempting to argue. The Song of Nunu is equivalent to Santa Monica Studio God of War titles. It's a more refined and simpler tale set in Riot Games lore, and I believe that without the gruesomeness of Kratos, past slaying mythical beasts and gods, that's as well. Instead, Song of Nunu does everything in its power to tell a delight story and fully immerse player in childlessness without being tacky or handed, forcing players to believe that the main characters are naive beings. I will be incredibly surprised if Song of Nunu failed to put a smile on your face at least once. The main gameplay elements of the Song of Nunu are comprised of the small minigames, puzzles, and combat sequences. Nothing is grindy, but the games themselves aren't necessarily deep either. Some of them are simple, like throwing snowballs at the blast cones in the correct order or climbing up the walls similar to Horizon Zero Dawn climbing mechanics. Others are complex, like playing the flute by selecting specific notes in tune the beat of moving puzzle pieces in a very specific order towards the end are some skill-based sequences that border on frustrating, but these frustrating little bits avoid mirroring the overall feel of the story. The gameplay elements supplement the story rather than act as intermissions between the skippable cutscenes. Do I wish that Song of Nunu combat that was fully realized? Yes, without a doubt. Combating is intermittent in Song of Nunu, peaking in the final boss sequences reminiscent of linear automatically forming bullet hell. Throughout this time, it's much less graphic. It would make sense of the lack of combat heaviness be determined of Nunu and Willump's lack of combat experience. It was the case. I would certainly hope that any future adventures of Song of Nunu wolves can be cute. Well, depending on this, I should say and share that I had a great time playing Song of Nunu, outside of multiple moments that I tugged onto my heartstrings and left me feeling all warm and fuzzy. I couldn't help but smile multiple times throughout the story. The story alone kept me going while the minigames were fun, albeit some more than the others. As the League of Legends players, it felt like multiple champions I helped main over the years were giving justice and opportunities to shine in the ways that they could have in the cinematic for a Skyline. Except now you could be the champions to see them interact. The world around them rather round down mid. Song of Nunu League of Legends story is an excellent candidate for your holidays gift list. If not a candidate for something to play this holiday season, it excels in crafting an emotional tale that hits all the right notes of childishness and the wonders of childhood, while also encouraging players forward. It's not the deepest game, but it's a masterclass in storytelling and world building. Don't worry if you are unfamiliar with any Riot's previous games. You don't need them. Willump will give you a gigantic hug either way you enter the game. Thanks.